So Speak No Evil has got to be one of the most chilling, haunting, and unnerving psychological thriller movies ever made. And I just think the title alone has got so much deep meaning to it in terms of if you are silent when you are witnessing and seeing evil taking place, then you are just as bad as you are allowing it to continue. I mean, it's very similar to that famous phrase in terms of evil is allowed to continue because good people do nothing. And it's also got a very confronting message in terms of if you are too nice and too much of a pushover, then unfortunately some people will literally push you over and take full advantage of you. And this movie really does take that to another level because these characters are unafraid of taking certain people's lives away. Now, this film is a remake of the recently released in 2022 Danish and Dutch movie of the same name, and it follows most of the same beats apart from the ending where they really did Hollywoodify the ending and they totally gave it the typical Hollywood treatment. And I just think this is unfortunate and really unrealistic because there is no chance that these characters would have survived and would have escaped these predators. And in the original 2022 movie, this is the case, as the antagonists stone the really nice people to death, steal their daughter, and then move on to the next victim. And that stoning death sequence is just so uncomfortable to watch, as these characters clearly can fight back and run away, but they just freeze, which is just the most frightening thing ever. I feel like that 2022 ending felt very, very similar to the incredibly underrated The Ones Below, where there's two couples, one is really, really strange, and by the end of it, you're seeing that the villains get away with it. And I love that the lesson with both of these movies is just listen to your gut, because your gut is always right. And I just feel like the main theme of this movie is so good because it is just so confronting, because a lot of people in society are people pleasers and are just too polite to express their boundaries, and therefore, like I said, just let people walk all over them. And then by that same token, unfortunately, there are people in society that are just willing to just take and walk all over these people, to the point where in both movies the villain very easily and very happily said, this is only happening because you allowed it to happen. So there are so many shocking moments in this film, so let's look at all of them in detail. So the first one really does show the relationship immediately, and it is easy to miss, but when you see Paddy asking whether or not he can take that lounge chair, which clearly has got Agnes's belongings on it, but Ben allows him to take it, and then Paddy just takes it in such an aggressive way, really showing straight away that Paddy has picked his really weak victim slash prey right from the beginning. And I think Paddy is such an interesting character because of this, because you do see in those little glimmering moments that Paddy is showing that he's a really toxic and very overly aggressive individual, but if people are wanting to ignore it and just focus on the charm and the charisma of this character, then he's like, well, more fool you. Next one is all about Sierra, so I feel like you can immediately see with this character that she really was also showing that she is an absolute psychopath. The two main sequences where you get to see this is firstly when she is taking Agnes to sleep in her bed, and secondly when she is disciplining her on the dining table, because this is a bit of a scary foreshadowing in terms of Sierra is viewing Agnes as her new daughter after they are going to murder her parents. I wasn't sure whether or not you could trust Ant in the beginning, but he was really showing that he is fully trustworthy, and when he was taking Agnes into the basement, and you were able to see all of the belongings, the suitcases, the watches, the phones of all of these previous families, along with that photo book of all of the previous victims, and they were showing that in every single family photo, Paddy and Sierra pretty much have a new child, so Agnes is going to be the next one. I did really like how Louise was definitely the voice of reasoning, but in one sequence she was eating meat despite being a vegetarian, and Paddy clearly knew this because they were having a beautiful vacation in Italy where he could clearly see that Louise is a vegetarian. So I just feel like people like Paddy just really want to push the limit as far as it can go, to the point where he's making people break their beliefs and just do whatever he wants them to do. Next, you can see that Louise and Ben felt really uncomfortable leaving their kid with an absolute stranger who has got no babysitting experience at all, but basically allow Paddy to convince them to do this just so that they can go to this even more bizarre dinner. And then the nice little juxtaposition that I feel like they incorporated into this movie is that the evil couple are clearly madly in love with each other, versus the really good, nice couple whose relationship is clearly on the rocks. And I just feel like there's some interesting social commentary over there, as the evil couple are just willing and happy to explore all of their feelings, whereas the nice couple just seem to bury it down below. I also thought it was interesting that Ben could have easily run away and attacked Paddy on multiple occasions, but maybe within himself he views himself as a weak individual, and therefore is really infatuated and intimidated by Paddy, even following him into the garage even after Paddy clearly flattened his tyre. And he could have picked up a hammer, which you do see him looking at the hammer, but then choosing not to. And thankfully, he has Louise by his side, because she was the one that was able to kill Mike to allow Ben to survive, and also snapped him out of it when he was having a mini breakdown. When you're seeing Ben and Louise escaping for the second time, and you're thinking they're maybe going to have their happily ever after, then you see Paddy throwing Ant into the pool. And I actually think they were sensible with their plan, as they were going to tell the police about where Ant is, so hopefully the police can save him. But obviously Paddy is always one step ahead, and he knew that they want to save Ant, and so he threw him into the pool. And I think it was really clever that they had established earlier on that Ant can't swim, and so then Ben comes back to save Ant, and in doing so he put his family in jeopardy once again. I mean, you could argue that if Ant didn't show Agnes all of the stuff in the basement in the first place, then they wouldn't have known all of the dark, sinister things that are actually taking place. And also Paddy has clearly killed so many kids that Ant unfortunately would have been the next on his list. And then speaking of kids, another sinister line was when Sierra was saying that her and Paddy have been together for 17 years, and if you do the math, then clearly Paddy had groomed, abused and manipulated Sierra, but for whatever reason she is still so obsessed with him. And they did answer a couple of questions very subtly, in terms of Sierra screaming that she is one of Paddy's first victims, and also Mike saying that he is going to help them as he always gets a cut from all of the money that the couples then transfer into his bank account. And it was just so chilling how Paddy was so happy to just allow Ben to pay for the bill and was pretty much walking out as soon as Ben offered. And then when Paddy is properly overreacting when Ant just can't dance to the beat, that you get to find out that Paddy was extremely badly disciplined by his own father, and maybe because of all of that he just doesn't want to work and instead just wants to steal from all of his victims and doesn't feel an ounce of guilt or remorse. So you know, I think Speak No Evil is such a powerful and chilling movie, and you just know as the movie is progressing that it's going to have a jaw-dropping and nail-biting and gripping finale, which it absolutely did have. But like I said, I think the other really sinister thing is all of the psychological thriller aspects of this movie, as unfortunately there are abusers like Paddy in real life that just have no problem taking and stealing and abusing other people. So even though I think it's unrealistic that the couple and all of the kids would have survived, especially with Mike in the mix too, and so I feel like the 2022 version had a slightly more realistic ending. But I remember when I watched this in the theaters, everybody was screaming for joy and cheering when Ant finally was able to kill off Paddy and get the ultimate revenge for all of the abuse that he had been victimized to. And so for being a really great thriller movie, as well as having some excellent social commentary, I am going to give Speak No Evil a solid 7 out of 10. Now I'd love to hear from you. What did you think of Speak No Evil? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video.